This beautiful villa was built in the 1820s, which means that it's over 200 years old. And most of what we see today is still original. The beautiful entryway is like a grand gesture that makes you really want to come inside, and the stairs up really elevate the experience. And you can see that the wooden doors, which have been painted green, are consistent throughout the whole design. Today we're going to look at the beautiful high-fidelity studio of Dimi Vesos.
Hey, my name is Dimi Vesos and I have a YouTube channel all about hi-fi and electronics. And yeah, I'd like to welcome you. Feel free.
Thank you very much.
Take a look.
This is the office. The design was kept very minimalistic so that you don't pull any of the attention from the original heritage of this beautiful house and villa. The walls are all painted in white, as are the window frames here. You can see them. And you have really beautiful gold details, such as the doorknobs or the window knobs. And my favorite thing already now in this villa is the original paintings from the 1920s in the ceiling. Yeah, it was painted over 200 years ago, and it's really beautiful. And to keep the same atmosphere of this room, the designer decided to add a vintage lamp. The floral elements in the ceiling also really draw a connection to the outside, because the outside we're living right next to a park, so you really have this connection to the local space. The furniture adds a pop of color, which I think is really beautiful. So you have this dark green, deep intense velvet sofa chairs that really correspond with the ceiling and the floral patterns on the top. And the really cool acrylic table really doesn't give the room too much depth, so that everything really still feels really bright and airy. And same thing goes for the really high ceilings. So you really feel like you have a lot of space to breathe and to let your mind wander. And I think it's really beautiful. And you can also see that the zoning of the room is really created through the carpet. Because of the carpet, you feel like this is one area of this room and the rest of the room feels like another type of area. Let's go inside the main studio. So this part of the studio is really just for listening to the music and embracing the music and testing out different types of high-fidelity speakers. And I think you can see that this room is really just embraces the personality of Dimi and of the studio. You really have a lot of really cool connections to the music, and they are like supported through the design. So if we go back to the way that this room is, you see again that everything is really white and minimalistic. And the beautiful wooden floor is actually original and is more than 200 years old. And that's really cool, I think. The room is filled with different types of speakers. And even though there are a lot of things in the room, and you could think that it's overwhelming at first, you see that the color palette is quite natural. You have the white, the browns, and also the blacks, and it adds a cohesion, even though there's so many things standing in the room. And one thing I really love is that the room is also very symmetrically built. I think one of the reasons is because also speakers always need to be symmetrically on each side, but it really gives the space a lot of harmony, and I really like it. And here you have the design, and the decoration goes beyond and tells the story from the beginning to the finish. So you don't just have the act of listening to the music, but you also have a lot of different artists, musical artists, different posters, some musical instruments, a saxophone. You can really see that the studio tells the whole entire story, from producing music up to listening to it. And I think that is really beautiful. And one thing I learned, which I really like about this room as well, is because it's such an old building, the acoustics are really bad. And to save this, because this room is supposed to be for listening to music, the really cool acoustic panels were installed in the ceiling that are actually disguised as a lighting system. So you don't feel like you have these big, typical traditional acoustic panels which don't look that nice, but instead you have just really cool ambient light. And I really like it. Of course, because this is such an old apartment, you always have really big, beautiful windows. And you can see that there's 3 of them, and they really structure the room and give it also a sort of a rhythm. Another perk of having such high ceilings is the fact that you can pull the door frames all the way to the top. And this really creates a cohesion, repetition throughout the rooms and makes them feel connected to each other, even though you can just close the doors and they become separate rooms. So if you go through here, The different spaces of the apartment really just flow from one space into the next, and this really creates a really nice harmony and makes you feel like this is just one really big space that flows into each other. And the doors are actually also, we think that they are also date all the way back to when this house was built, and they were just restored a little bit, so that's really cool. Here we come into the kitchen. Because this is a studio, this is not a fully equipped kitchen, but it's just a place where you can relax, have a coffee, have a cup of tea, maybe eat or drink something. And even here, we can see the really cool merch of the studio, which I think is quite cool. And now we will go into the last room, which really is the gem of this apartment. And I think when you see it, you will know why. I think when you enter this room, you really just transported back all the way 200 years back to when this apartment was built, because all of the elements in this room really reflect this time. On the one hand, of course, we have the original beautiful marble fireplace, which is just incredible. I think it's really, really cool. On the other hand, all of the furniture that was used really supports the story and the history of the place. So you really feel connected to that old time. All of the furniture that we see here is vintage, and that's really cool, and secondhand. So every single piece, such as this dark green velvet armchair, has had a history before it came here. And I think it adds even more value to this design. This is another room for listening to music. Before we already had a little listening session, and it sounds really cool. The color palette in this room is a little bit more pared down and toned down than in the rest of the apartment, which is airy and bright, so that you can relax here, because this is really a place for relaxation. And the tones that were chosen are really dark, rich colors, such as this dark green velvet sofa, or really dark and heavy dark red curtains. And you can really feel the weight of everything that is inside here. It really tells a coherent design story. Once again, we can see that the entire setup of this room is more or less symmetric, and it really balances out the room. On the one hand, we have the beautiful fireplace. On the other hand, we have a nice and big shelf that balances out the room. And as you know, every room needs a focal point and a place where if you enter the room, your eye instantly draws on it, and it really is like the center of the room. And here, without a doubt, it's the beautiful setup. And it's just really cool. And you can see just the importance that it has in this room and in this whole design, because it basically takes up half the room, and there's a lot of space behind, there's a lot of space on both sides, and you really see that this is the reason why you're supposed to be in this room, to relax and to listen to some music. One more cool thing that we have in this apartment is the terrace outside. Ah, squirrel! Yeah. This beautiful terrace is yet another place where you are just thrown back 200 years ago, where you can imagine just running around with your family, eating breakfast. I think it's really beautiful. It really gives you the feeling that you're living in an antique and grand villa in the center of Hamburg. Behind me we have a beautiful park, so we're really perfectly connected. On the one hand, you can go to the park. On the other hand, on the other side, you can see the Elbe, which is the biggest river in Hamburg, and it's very cool. Yes. Thank you for watching this video. If you like the video, please subscribe, and I hope to see you next week.